All right, listeners, buckle up because today we're going deep, really deep.
Deep.
Yeah, into the world of consciousness.
Oh.
But not just, the humankind.
Right.
We're talking way beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
You'd send over this article and it got me thinking.
Yeah.
It was suggesting that maybe even things like trees could have...
Trees?
I know, right?
Why?
Trees could have some kind of awareness.
Really interesting stuff.
So that's what we're going to dig into today.
Okay.
What does it actually mean
Yeah.
to be conscious?
Huge question.
Could non-human things, even trees, like the article suggests, has some form of sentience?
It makes you wonder.
It really does.
Yeah.
And how does all of this tie into this whole pursuit of artificial intelligence? I mean,
Big implications.
yeah, huge.
Yeah.
So maybe the first thing we should do is
Yeah.
define some terms here.
Sure.
Like, what are we even talking
What
about
do we mean?
when we say
When we say consciousness.
conscious?
Well, I think what's really fascinating is that
No.
we often get so stuck on human consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Like we think about ourselves and
Yeah.
how we experience the world,
Yeah.
but we might be totally missing other types of awareness
Yeah.
that could be operating on totally different timescales
Totally.
or even with completely different mechanisms.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole talking trees idea.
Okay.
The article talks about how trees communicate through these underground fungal networks.
Yeah, with the Wood Wide Web.
Right. The Wood Wide Web, it's a good one.
I love that.
Yeah, sharing information about pests or like resources,
Right, like warnings.
warnings.
Or, hey, I found some good stuff over here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like they're sending chemical signals back and forth.
Uh-huh.
Like it's a super slow internet for trees.
It is, yeah, like a really, really old school internet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But it's there.
But it's definitely there.
Yeah.
So those networks exist,
Right.
and they are incredibly complex.
Yeah.
But before we jump to calling it sentience,
Right.
I think we need to be careful about what we mean
Yeah.
by that.
What are we actually talking about?
Well, the article defines sentience as having a subjective experience,
Okay.
right? So an awareness
Awareness.
of oneself in the world.
Okay.
Like it's like
Yeah.
to be that tree.
To be that tree.
Now, consciousness, on the other hand,
Yeah.
usually refers to more complex stuff.
Okay.
Like self-awareness,
Yeah.
reasoning, planning.
Gotcha. So maybe
Meta-level stuff.
okay. So maybe trees aren't like having deep philosophical conversations
Probably not.
underground.
Right. Right.
Okay, but here's where it gets really, really interesting. The article makes this point
Yeah.
that consciousness is more like a process than a thing.
Ross says, yeah.
It's about constant computation,
Mm,
always updating beliefs
yeah.
based on new information.
It's always changing.
It's always evolving.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's not like an on-off switch.
No, not at all. Yeah.
It's more like a dimmer
Yeah.
that's constantly adjusting.
I like that. I like that analogy.
Yeah, it's constantly kind of responding to the environment,
Yeah.
taking an input
Okay.
and adjusting its output.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And I think this ties into something you were talking about earlier, which is,
yeah.
like if something is to be considered conscious,
Right.
it needs a way to model itself
Yeah.
and its place in the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So think of it like like a robot
Yeah.
navigating a maze, right? It needs to have some kind of mental map of the maze,
Okay.
but it also needs to know where it is in the maze.
Right.
To plan its moves, got to know.
So that's what a self-model
Yeah.
lets a system do,
Okay.
is it can make sense of information
Gotcha.
and act in a purposeful way.
Okay. So then could these fungal networks or even the communication that's happening
Oh.
inside single cells
Yeah.
be considered very, 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 very early
Early.
forms of this computational consciousness? I mean, they are processing information
Yeah.
and reacting to their environment
Right.
in complex ways, right?
It's a huge question.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think we're just starting to really scratch the surface
Yeah.
of those possibilities.
It's wild.
Yeah, like what would it be like to experience the world as a network of trees
Yeah.
or even as a single-celled organism?
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
so crazy.
it's mind-boggling.
No, not to even imagine.
Yeah.
And then we have the whole AI angle,
Oh, yeah.
which the article goes into.
It talks about what it would take for a computer system
Right.
to be considered truly conscious?
Yeah, what would we need to see?
What would we need to see? I mean, is it possible?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
You know, I think it boils down to some key things.
Okay.
One is having that self-referential model
Okay.
you were talking about.
That map.
That map,
Okay.
being able to anticipate consequences.
Ooh. Interesting.
Right. So not just reacting,
Right. Not just a stimulus response,
but thinking ahead.
thinking ahead, planning.
And even having a capacity for curiosity.
Curiosity. Wow. Okay.
Right. Wanting to learn and explore.
Like a drive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
an
all right.
internal drive
Yeah.
to understand things.
Okay.
And those are all signs of
Well,
intelligence.
yeah.
Whether we're talking about biological systems like our brains
Yeah.
or artificial ones.
I find it so fascinating that
Yeah.
that the same rules
Yeah.
might apply.
It makes you wonder.
It really does.
You know, if we could create AI
Yeah.
that showed those things,
Yeah.
would we have to consider it conscious?
It makes you wonder.
Yeah, and what kind of ethical responsibilities?
Right. I mean, that's a whole other
That's a whole
can of worms, right?
huge, yeah.
Yeah, like it's a huge question.
It is.
And one that we absolutely need to be thinking about
Absolutely.
as AI gets
As it gets more and more advanced.
more and more
Yeah.
advanced and powerful.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, and it gets even weirder.
Oh.
The article talks about
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
other forms of consciousness
Yeah.
that are just so out there.
So out there, like what?
Like hyper-consciousness.
Hyper-consciousness.
Where a being might perceive time on these vast scales
Wow.
or see multiple possibilities
Okay.
all at once.
That's wild.
I mean, I can't even imagine
I know.
wrapping my head around that.
It's like time travel for your mind.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can see all these different.
Like, what would our priorities be if we could do that?
I don't know.
Would we still focus on such short-term things?
It's hard to. I mean,
I think it's.
I don't know.
Yeah?
I think it's a really humbling thought
It is.
that there might be types of consciousness out there that we can't even recognize because they operate on principles that are so different.
So different from our own.
From our own.
Yeah. Okay, let's bring it back down to earth for a second.
Okay.
I know we've been exploring some really far out ideas here.
We have.
But the article does remind us
Yeah.
that human consciousness, at least how we currently understand it,
Right.
is tied to brain function.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
That's our current understanding.
Right. And the article points out that when the brain is disrupted,
Yeah.
we lose consciousness.
Right.
In a way that doesn't happen if, say, some bodily function is disrupted.
Right. Like if you injure your leg,
Yeah, you're not going to...
you're not going to pass out.
Right, exactly. But,
Yeah.
you know, I was thinking about this the other day.
Yeah.
I was hiking,
Yeah.
and I just had this feeling of being so connected
Oh, nice.
to everything around me.
Yeah.
You know, it really makes you wonder
Yeah.
what other forms of awareness are out there
It
that
does.
we just don't understand.
I mean, and that's the key, right?
Yeah.
Is that those interactions between brain, body, and environment,
Yeah.
they shape our experiences and how we act in the world.
Wow, we covered some serious ground today.
We did.
So big takeaways. Consciousness might be more of an ongoing process than a fixed state.
Yeah, I like that.
There could be other forms of awareness
Totally.
we can't even fathom.
I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
And building truly conscious AI brings up some really, really big ethical questions
Huge ethical questions.
that we need to be talking about
Yeah.
and thinking about right now.
Yeah, and I think it all points to
Yeah.
a much broader spectrum
Yeah.
of consciousness.
Than we usually think about.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know. So this leads me to a final
Okay.
thought for you to ponder.
Are you ready?
Okay, if consciousness
Mm-hmm.
does exist on a spectrum,
Yeah.
where do we humans
Where do we fit in?
fall on that scale?
Yeah.
Are we the ultimate peak of awareness, or are we just one point along a huge continuum that we're just starting to understand?
That's a great question.
It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
So keep exploring this,
Keep
listeners.
thinking about it.
It's a truly
It's fascinating.
fascinating mystery,
Yeah.
and we're just starting
We're at the beginning.
to peel back the layers.
It's going to be exciting to see what we discover.
I can't wait to see what comes next. Thanks for joining me,
My pleasure.
as always.
Always a good time.
And until next time,
Happy exploring.
keep those brains firing. and those questions come in.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.